You're listening to the Restaurant Operator Podcast.
At Summit Hill Foods Professional, creativity comes with a side of convenience. See how our full range of sauces and bases can help you reinvent your recipes and your customer experiences. By simplifying the cooking process, cutting down on ingredients, shortening prep time, and reducing waste, you can bring even more flavor to your menu with a whole lot less of everything else. Learn more at shfoodspro.com/bigflavors.
Welcome to the Restaurant Operator Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about craft cocktails with Don Robinson, President and CEO for Parlour in Louisville, Kentucky. Don, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Mandy.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your craft cocktail menu. I know that you have some really great drinks on your drinks menu. What inspired you to go the craft cocktail route in your pizzeria instead of just having the regular old beer and wine? What was the impetus behind the craft cocktails on your restaurant menu?
When we developed Parlour and we decided to scale the brand, we wanted to be a little bit different than your typical independent pizza concept. And we use two words constantly in our organization. We use elevated and atmosphere. And elevated, we try to do from the food we deliver to our service to our craft cocktail menu. And so what we tried to do is really take an elevated approach to the craft cocktails and do something that you would expect at a more high-end elevated restaurant and bring it down to the pizza segment. And, so what we do, what we pride ourselves on is really doing things differently when we started constructing the craft cocktails we make all of our own simple syrups in-house for all of our drinks, whether they're our signature drinks or our seasonal drinks. And we soak our own bourbon cherries as opposed to just buying them, because we put it in when we soak them, it's not just soaking them in a few things. It's 11 ingredients that we mix and soak the bourbon cherries in. And we take a lot of pride in our craft cocktail line, for sure.
Sure. So how do you source the ingredients for your craft cocktails? Do you prioritize any local or artisan products? Obviously, being here in Kentucky, bourbon is going to be number one. How do you kind of go the local or the artisan route?
Sure. So we have our expert is Brianne Money, who develops the recipes and the ingredients, and we try to use as much local as we can. And we certainly on our bourbon drinks have the more traditional bourbon flares, like our old fashioned is something we take a lot of pride in as one of our top sellers. And, we'll use Old Forester. We try to get as traditional as we can, but with our twist on it. And Brianne has done a phenomenal job of, putting things together. I'm looking at right now, we're rolling out our new seasonal cocktails, our fall and winter on November 1st. So last night we met, she had about 8 or 10 of us testing all of her new cocktails, and they were amazing. So we really lean on her to get that local flair when possible.
Absolutely. What role does creativity play in designing your craft cocktail menu? And how you said you update it seasonally. So how often are you adding or taking off drinks?
So we have 5 signature cocktails. We have our Parlour Old Fashioned, a Parlour Rita, a Brambleberry Mule, a Downtown Sangria, and then our Bloody Mary. And then we will try to do seasonal cocktails every 4 months. We'll roll out 5 seasonals every 4 months.
Tell me the process of crafting a signature cocktail from the concept to when it actually makes the menu. What steps go into it?
Yeah, again, that we lean on Brianne and her expertise, but she really the couple of the key items is it has to be the syrups. They have to be made in-house. We want that differentiator on our end. And even down, like one of our cocktails coming out here in November is a raspberry fizz, where she's making our own raspberry jelly to put in this, as opposed to just buying a raspberry jelly. So,
Sure.
She's very creative, but those are kind of the guidelines we give her. Is it's got to be very unique, and it's got to be something that you would expect at a very high end restaurant.
Right. Do you have a favorite cocktail? What's your favorite on the menu?
My go-to is a Parlour old fashioned.
Okay. And what goes into that?
So, in our old fashioned, of course, she makes our own simple syrup. We use the old Forester 86, but then she uses in our syrup, she's using flavors of the allspice, cinnamon, vanilla, citrus, and then of course it has an orange peel, and then one of our our house soaked bourbon cherries.
That sounds amazing. And doing so much in-house, how are you keeping your labor costs down?
We batch it in large batches, but often we kind of batch it. We want it as fresh as we possibly can, and we typically, it's a bar manager or salaried manager doing those syrup mixes, and cooking those off. So we spend a little bit more on the labor part, but again, we always go back to elevated in atmosphere, right? We know there's a price to pay for delivering that elevated product and elevated service.
What about glassware? Did you guys put a lot of thought into how you wanted to present those drinks on the menu?
We have, and Mandy, to be honest with you, it was one of those, as we grew rapidly during COVID, really. Right. And we backfilled existing restaurants when we grew. And so we inherited a lot of glassware. So it's been a little hit and miss and different at every location until recently. And now we spent several weeks determining, the proper glassware and replacing the glassware we had in all the locations, so we get some consistency across the brand as we scale.
Okay, that makes sense. What about the balance of flavors? Does Brienne really take that into consideration when she's formulating these drinks, how well the flavors are going to balance together and balance also with your pizza?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that is another thing that we are working on with this new menu is determining, all right, it pairs well with a hot honey pepperoni, or it pairs well with the Dr. Pizza or a grinder. So yeah, a lot of considerations in how those flavors mix and what it pairs well with.
And are servers trained to kind of recommend a drink with whatever the customer is ordering?
That is certainly our goal. We continue to work on that on a daily basis, but we do have those training tools in place, and kind of again along the lines of the glassware, it's a work in progress. We're getting there, and we feel like to deliver, we preach elevated, so to deliver the elevated service, we've got to have an elevated training program.
Right. What kind of work went into getting a liquor license as opposed to a beer and wine license?
In the state of Kentucky, it is much easier than other states for sure.
Okay.
So with a good mix of food versus alcohol, it is not a difficult process in the state of Kentucky. Indiana is a totally different story. They're allocated by county liquor license. So we are fortunate in Indiana that we are in our two locations are in enterprise zones. So they allot some variances there. But as we prepare to scale, we're talking to folks in other areas of Indiana and Tennessee and Ohio and Florida. We're learning that the liquor license process is considerably different as you cross state lines.
Right. And you have to adhere to those definitely to make sure that you're following the law.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we do use an attorney that is experienced in the liquor license process. it's an investment that I highly recommend to make sure that you don't miss anything. I mean, and stay extremely organized on the renewal process, because it can certainly sneak up on you. And those, in some states, those licenses are so coveted, you don't want it to slip through your fingers.
Sure. And what about serving? I know that there are some rules and regulations when it comes to over serving, and your bartenders and your staff kind of have to be, stay ahead of that. Do you all follow Serve Safe? Is that what training you use, or how are you training your employees for that?
We do. Yeah, we've adopted the Serve Safe alcohol training. And then we are in the process of getting our area coach, which is a district manager per se, as a proctor, to where she can do those trainings and ensure that is part of the process. So before bartenders, run solo shifts, they are going to have that Serve Safe alcohol training and certification prior to. It can't express enough how important that process is.
What are the expectations on servers as opposed to bartenders? Because not everybody sits at the bar. So what should servers be looking out for?
Always be alert, always be, keep an eye on the guest, and avoid the underage sharing of the drinks or over serving. And we emphasize that training with all of our management that are doing their walks, the manager walk in the dining room, to look out for those items, and never hesitate to, if you're a little uncertain, never hesitate to pull the trigger quicker and cut that person off.
What about accommodating people with dietary issues or restrictions with craft cocktails? Do you ever have customers who come in and say, well, I'm allergic to dairy. Is there any dairy in this drink?
We do, and that's part of the education of the ingredients, and we try to cover all of that in our pre-shift meetings of, hey, here are the, this may be a drink that we are highlighting tonight. Here are the ingredients. But prior to taking the floor on solo shifts or solo bartending shifts, it is the menu education of, here's what we have, and these are the ingredients, and we try to do our best to prepare them and get them ready for those questions prior to them happening.
Do you have underage staff? Are they allowed to serve? They're not allowed to serve alcohol the same way an underage clerk in a grocery store wouldn't be able to serve. Is that right?
Yeah, and again, it's different as you enter different states. So, in some states it can be 18, and some it's 21, some it's 20. And we just, that is a state by state law that you just have to adhere to. But we certainly, I would recommend understanding your local laws and making sure your managers are highly trained on those laws and understanding.
What do you see? What are some of the trends that we're seeing right now? What's popular right now? I mean, obviously, I know, a couple of years ago, it was flavored martinis were all the rage. What are you seeing now in terms of trends?
Yeah, I think we're really seeing, the whole craft cocktails in general are really picking up. And, I think we're trying to stay ahead of that with what we are doing of making, elevating our products and making the syrups ourselves and educating our guests. There's a lot of things that we do that people had no clue. So it's, all right, well, let's educate them. But that tends to be the trend at the moment is doing your own syrups, making sure that the garnish is different than the next person, right? I mean, everybody has an old fashioned, but how are you making yours? Or, everybody has a great Bloody Mary, but what's different about yours? And we're constantly trying to find ways to make ours so, very unique. And I think that is where the guests are going. They love the uniqueness of cocktails, and they always love the uniqueness of food, but cocktails seem to be we're seeing our craft cocktails continuing to grow.
What about pricing? Now, I know personally for me, I was at a nice restaurant in Tampa last weekend, and they actually had happy hour from 4 to 7, and we were there on a Friday night. And that the prices of the drinks really make that second drink a reality if the drinks are priced right. How are you guys kind of pricing your drinks to make sure that they're affordable and that people will order them in addition to those breadsticks or the wings, which y'all's wings are so good, but they're so good. But making sure that it's not either or, that they're not ordering a drink instead of an appetizer.
Sure. Yeah. And we try to do that right out of the gate with when we're engineering the menu. We want to keep that price point between $8 and $10. And if sure, we could make some modifications and we could have a $15, $16 cocktail on the menu, but it isn't the avenue that we want to go as a company. So we're not a company that is big on discounts or
Right.
couponing. So what we've tried to do is just make the absolute best drink or food or what have you that we can at a reasonable price, so that we don't have to do those things, the happy hours here and there. And we will do them occasionally. Primarily, we try to do that with our collaboration craft beer as opposed to the craft cocktails.
And what do you see in the future? What do you think are some of the trends that we're going to see in the future when it comes to craft cocktails?
Well, I think that it's going to continue down the path that it is. I think it's going to continue down the creativity path, the uniqueness of the new different lines of alcohols that are coming out, the spirits that we're tending to see a little bit outside of Louisville, of course, but a little bit heavier trend toward the clears. They're becoming, it seems to be a little more popular and moving quicker. Of course, in Louisville, bourbon is king and always will be, right?
Right.
But I think we're going to see that. I think we're going to continue to see the creativity, but a shift a little bit more toward clear being a little more acceptable in a lot of these seasonal and craft cocktails.
So let's say we're talking to a restaurant that is maybe considering a craft cocktail menu to their own restaurant. What advice would you give them about starting a craft cocktail menu? Obviously, they're going to want to put time and effort into it and thought into it. But what tips would you recommend to them?
I can talk from our perspective, but I would say be unique and be different and not, again, every concept has their own path, and, it may be, it's a little different for everyone. For us, it's to be unique, be different, not take the easy path of, pre-made syrups or, what have you. But I think the key, if you want a successful craft cocktail and it to be a good percentage of your business, you've got to take your time and focus on the uniqueness of what fits your brand.
Well, that's excellent. That's excellent. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Mandy. Appreciate the invite and happy to share.
That'll do it for this edition of Restaurant Operator Podcast, and we'll catch y'all next time. Thank you.
With a full range of sauces and bases, Summit Hill Foods Professional helps you cut down on prep time, ingredients, and waste, so you can bring more flavor to your menu with a whole lot less of everything else. Learn more at shfoodspro.com/bigflavors.